She stood in the middle of the penthouse, hands trembling, the folder clutched tightly against her chest. Her voice, when it came, was broken but fierce. "How long were you going to keep lying to me?" Nathan froze in the doorway, the weight of her words crashing down on him like a tidal wave. The truth, once hidden in the shadows, now hung between them raw, unforgiving. She had trusted him. She had started to believe in him. And now everything was shattered. Tonight, we bring you the story of a man who built a marriage on lies and the woman who found the strength to confront him, forgive him, and perhaps find something real beyond the betrayal. Can love survive when the foundation is built on revenge? Stay with us as we unfold this powerful journey of heartbreak, redemption, and healing. If you enjoy stories that touch the soul, do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. And remember to turn on the notification bell so you never miss another story that speaks to your heart. Now, let us begin. The city wept beneath the night sky, rain cascading from heavy clouds as if mourning some forgotten sorrow. On the glistening streets below, neon reflections stretched and rippled like restless ghosts. High above, in the tallest glass tower overlooking the storm, Nathan Hale sat alone, bathed in the dim glow of his office. At 38 years old, Nathan was a man the world respected, a titan in the world of medical technology. His innovations had saved countless lives, earning him admiration and awe. But behind the glass walls and polished titles, he was simply a man adrift, haunted by wounds no success could ever heal. He leaned back in his chair, his green eyes distant, fingers absently tapping the cold marble of his desk. Outside, thunder rumbled low and distant, but the true storm raged inside him. Memories, long buried, rose unbidden. He saw her, his mother, Margaret Hale, fragile and fading, whispering apologies into the sterile air of a hospital room. Clutching his hand with all the strength she had left, she had been his world once, a woman who raised him alone after the death of his father, building a life out of scraps and love. They had so little, yet Nathan had always felt rich in the things that mattered, until Victor Langston came. With his promises of stability, of family, Victor had walked into their lives with a perfect smile and a hidden knife. For a time, Margaret believed in him. Nathan did too. They dreamed of a home, of days without fear, but the dream was short-lived. Victor betrayed them without hesitation, choosing another life, another love, leaving Margaret to gather the pieces of a heart he had shattered. Nathan, still barely more than a boy then, could only watch helplessly as grief hollowed out the woman who had once carried the weight of their little world with such fierce grace. When she passed away, alone, her hand clutching nothing but a worn photograph of her son, Nathan promised himself one thing he would never forgive, and he would never forget. Tonight, that promise was all that kept him standing. Somewhere in the city below, Elena Langston lived her life unaware, the daughter of the man who had ruined his. Nathan had waited years for this moment. He had crafted every step carefully, his heart frozen around one singular purpose: marry her, use her, break her, and in doing so, finally make Victor Langston understand what it meant to lose everything. But even as the rain lashed against the windows, a quiet doubt stirred within him. Would revenge truly heal what had been broken, or would it only leave him more alone than ever before? The question lingered, unanswered, as Nathan Hale stared into the night, a man poised on the edge of a choice that would change both their lives forever. Nathan's grief had never stayed grief for long. In the lonely months after his mother's death, sorrow hardened into rage, and rage, in time, became the quiet, immovable resolve that would shape the rest of his life. He made a vow, As a young man standing by a grave no one else visited. He would rise. He would rebuild everything that had been stolen from them, and when he stood tall enough, strong enough, he would make Victor Langston pay for the ruin he had left behind. Years later, Nathan had fulfilled that promise. He had built an empire in the field of medical innovation, a company that changed lives, saved lives, and generated fortunes. From the outside, Nathan Hale was the picture of success, but inside, the ache never left him. Every triumph, every accolade, echoed hollow against the memory of what he had lost. And then fate, with its cruel sense of irony, presented him with an unexpected opportunity. Victor Langston, once untouchable, was now a shadow of his former self. His wealth had crumbled, his influence faded, and illness had begun to gnaw away at what remained of his dignity. But he had a daughter, Elena Langston. By all accounts, she was nothing like her father. Where Victor had been ruthless and vain, Elena was kind, selfless, tireless in her devotion to helping others. But Nathan did not care. She was Victor's blood, and if he could not destroy Victor directly, he would reach him through the thing he must have loved most, his daughter. Nathan's lips curved into a slow, cold smile as he considered Elena. She had no idea what was coming. The first time Nathan Hale saw Elena Langston, she was kneeling on the floor of a crowded community center, struggling to organize a mountain of donated clothes. Her hair was tied back in a loose, messy bun. Her clothes were simple, practical. Her cheeks were flushed with exertion. But her smile, even tired, was warm and real. Nathan had expected someone different. In his mind, the daughter of Victor Langston should have been polished, arrogant, untouched by hardship. Instead, he found her ordinary, real, and somehow, that made her even more dangerous. He watched from a distance at first, studying the way she moved through the room, stopping to thank volunteers, offering encouragement, never drawing attention to herself. No arrogance, no entitlement, just a quiet strength that stirred something in him he could not name. For a heartbeat. Nathan hesitated, but only for a heartbeat. He adjusted the cuffs of his tailored jacket and stepped forward, his presence turning heads even before he spoke. "Miss Langston," he said, his voice smooth, polished like a blade hidden in velvet. "I have heard about the work you are doing here. It is remarkable." Elena straightened, startled by the tall, sharply dressed man now standing before her. "Oh," she said, brushing a strand of hair from her forehead. "Thank you. We are just trying to do what we can." Nathan offered a smile he had perfected over years of high-stakes negotiations. "Allow me to help," he said simply. "Whatever you need, funding, resources, partnerships, consider it done." Elena blinked, clearly taken aback by the offer. "That is incredibly generous, Mr. Hale. But why?" Nathan tilted his head, feigning thoughtfulness. "Let us just say," he replied smoothly, "I believe in giving back, and I admire those who dedicate themselves to something bigger than themselves." It was a lie. Nathan did not care about the community center, or the people who found shelter within its walls. This was simply step one, earning Elena's trust, inserting himself into her life, setting the trap, and he played the part perfectly. In the weeks that followed, Nathan became a constant presence. He donated large sums to the center. He appeared at fundraising events. He even rolled up his sleeves and volunteered, always ensuring that Elena noticed. Bit by bit, he wove himself into her world, and yet, something he had not planned for began to happen. The more time Nathan spent near Elena, the harder it became to see her as just a pawn in his revenge. It was not only her kindness, or her tireless dedication to those she served. It was the way she stood tall without seeking recognition. It was the quiet dignity in her every action. Nathan found himself drawn to her in ways that had nothing to do with revenge and everything to do with a part of himself he thought he had long since buried, a part that still remembered how to hope. There was something in Elena Langston's presence, a quiet resilience, a strength she wore like a second skin that unsettled Nathan more than he cared to admit. She was nothing like her father, nothing like the enemy he had spent so many years hating. For a fleeting moment, the certainty of his plan wavered. A small voice deep within him asked a question he was not ready to face. What if she did not deserve this? Nathan shook the thought away. This was not about her. This was about settling old debts, and he would not let sentiment derail him now. Yet later, as he sat across from Elena in a corner of a lively, bustling cafe, he found that voice harder to silence. Elena looked tired. Exhaustion pulled at the corners of her eyes, and her hands trembled slightly as she stirred the coffee before her. Nathan had watched her closely these past weeks. He knew her burdens. Her father's health was failing fast, and the medical bills were growing heavier by the day. She was drowning, quietly, stubbornly, with no one to reach for, and tonight, Nathan would offer her a lifeline, one that would tie her fate to his forever. He folded his hands on the table, his voice calm and measured as he began. "I have been thinking," he said, his gaze steady on her, "about your situation, about your father." Elena glanced up, suspicion flickering briefly across her face. "What about him?" she asked. Her voice guarded. Nathan leaned in, lowering his voice just enough to make the world around them seem far away. "I want to help you. Elena, I can cover the cost of his treatment, give him the best care money can buy. You would not have to worry about anything ever again." For a moment, Elena simply stared at him, disbelief widening her eyes. "That is incredibly generous," she said slowly, "but I cannot accept that. It is too much." Nathan allowed a faint, calculated smile to touch his lips. "I am not offering it as charity," he said. "I am offering it as a deal." Confusion clouded her face. "A deal," she echoed. He nodded once, his expression unreadable. "Marry me." The words hung between them, heavy and undeniable. Elena blinked, as if struggling to process what she had just heard. What?" she whispered. "Marry me," Nathan repeated, his voice firm. "It is a simple arrangement. You become my wife. In return, I ensure your father receives everything he needs. Your financial troubles disappear. You get your life back." Elena's heart thundered in her chest. "Why?" she asked, her voice almost breaking. "Why would you want to marry me?" Nathan leaned back, his face giving away nothing. "Let us just say I have my own reasons," he said smoothly. "It is a mutually beneficial agreement. You get help. I get what I need." Elena stared down at her trembling hands, her mind a whirlwind of doubt and desperation. She thought of her father lying helpless in a sterile hospital bed. She thought of the endless nights spent worrying, the crushing loneliness of carrying a burden too heavy for one person to bear. This offer could change everything. Yet something about Nathan's proposal, the coldness in his eyes, the controlled tone of his voice made her skin prickle with unease. "I do not know," she whispered. "This feels wrong." Nathan's jaw tensed for a fraction of a second, but he quickly masked it with a reassuring smile. "I understand your hesitation," he said, his voice softer now, coaxing. "But think about it. Elena, this is not about love or romance. It is survival. You need help. I am offering it." Elena sat frozen, torn between fear and hope. She did not trust Nathan, not fully, but what choice did she have? Her father's life hung in the balance, and if she lost him, she would never forgive herself. After a long, aching silence, she finally lifted her gaze to meet his. Her voice was a whisper, barely audible over the cafe's hum. "All right," she said. "I will do it." Nathan's smile widened, but it never quite reached his eyes. "Good," he said simply, sealing a deal that would change both their lives in ways neither of them yet understood. Nathan's voice had been calm, almost triumphant when Elena agreed. "You will not regret this," he had said. But as the days sped toward their wedding, the world around Elena became a blur, a whirlwind of decisions she barely made, dresses she did not choose, flowers she never asked for. Nathan spared no expense, orchestrating a grand spectacle that splashed across society pages and gossip columns alike. To the world, it was a union of power and grace. To Elena, it felt like being trapped inside someone else's story. The dress was exquisite. The flowers filled the air with dizzying sweetness. The endless line of unfamiliar faces offering congratulations blurred into a single, overwhelming tide. And through it all, Nathan remained at her side, poised and perfect, yet distant, his warmth locked away behind a wall she could not reach. On their wedding night, Elena sat alone at the edge of a vast, cold bedroom in Nathan's penthouse. The city lights outside glittered like distant promises she no longer believed in. She felt like a prisoner in a gilded cage, adorned in silk and diamonds, but caged all the same. When Nathan finally entered the room, he said nothing. He crossed to the window, turning his back to her, hands clasped tightly behind him, the silence pressed down, heavy and suffocating. "Nathan," Elena said softly, her voice trembling despite herself. "Why did you really marry me?" For a long time, he said nothing. The only sound was the distant hum of the city. Finally, without turning, Nathan answered, his voice low and hollow. "It does not matter," he said. "What matters is that you are here now. That is all you need to know." The words landed like stones in her chest. She turned away, her heart aching with a loneliness deeper than she had ever known. She did not understand him, and she feared she never would, that night, lying awake in a bed too large. Elena stared at the ceiling, wondering who exactly she had tethered her life to. Across the divide of the bed, Nathan lay rigid, staring into the darkness, and for the first time in years, he wondered if he had made a terrible mistake. The days that followed were a strange, painful blur. Elena moved into Nathan's penthouse, a place of glass, steel, and clinical perfection. It was beautiful in a way that felt cold, untouchable, like living inside a museum. She tried to adjust, to find a rhythm in her new life, but every attempt was met with the same quiet, polite distance from Nathan. He was never cruel, he was never unkind, but he was never truly there either. An invisible wall stood between them, and no matter how hard she tried, Elena could not break through. For Nathan, maintaining that wall had been his plan from the beginning. Marry Elena, keep her close, and slowly, methodically, dismantle her world. But reality, it seemed, had other plans, because the longer he lived beside her, the more difficult it became to ignore the small, simple ways she unsettled him. It started with the smallest things, the way she left a cup of coffee on his desk each morning, though he had never asked, the way she silently straightened the living room after he left it in disarray, never complaining, never seeking thanks, the way she would sit by the window in the evenings, her face bathed in the soft glow of the city, lost in thoughts she never shared. There was a quiet resilience in her, a strength that asked for nothing and gave everything. And Nathan, who had spent his life armoring himself against weakness, found it harder and harder to remember why he was supposed to tear her apart. One evening, Nathan came home later than usual. He expected the sterile silence he had grown used to, but instead, the penthouse was filled with the warm, inviting scent of something home-cooked. He followed the smell into the kitchen, where he found Elena at the counter, sleeves rolled up, carefully chopping vegetables. "You are cooking," he said, surprised, the words falling from him without thought. Elena looked up, a small smile tugging at her lips. "I figured we both have to eat," she said lightly. "And I thought you might be tired of takeout." Nathan hesitated at the threshold, unsure how to step into a world that felt so unfamiliar. "You did not have to do that," he said finally, his voice a little rougher than he intended. "I know," Elena replied simply, her tone warm. "But I wanted to." He said nothing. For a moment, he just watched her. The easy way she moved, the care in the way she prepared something meant not for show, but for comfort. Later, as he sat at the table and tasted the meal she had made, a strange, unfamiliar warmth spread through him, something he had not felt in what seemed like a lifetime. In the weeks that followed, moments like these became more frequent, despite the awkward beginnings, despite the distance still between them. Elena, quietly, gently, began to weave herself into the empty spaces of Nathan's life, and without even realizing it, he began to let her. Elena never tried to change Nathan. She did not shower him with grand gestures or force her way into his guarded world. She was simply herself, quiet, kind, steady, and it was that simple truth, more than anything else, that began to erode the fortress Nathan had built around his heart. But with every small crack in his defenses came a deeper, gnawing guilt. He found himself watching her when she was not looking, the way her brow furrowed in concentration as she lost herself in a book, the way her laughter, when she spoke to her father on the phone, filled the penthouse with a warmth the cold walls had never known. She was nothing like Victor Langston. She was kind, selfless, genuine, all the things Nathan had convinced himself no Langston could ever be, and that realization made his carefully crafted plan feel suddenly wrong. One evening, as they sat together in the vast, silent living room, Elena turned toward him, her hands folded in her lap, a hesitant smile playing at her lips. "Thank you," she said softly. Nathan frowned slightly, caught off guard. "For what?" he asked. "For helping my father," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "I know. This marriage is not exactly ordinary, but you have done more for him than I could ever repay. It means more to me than I can say." Nathan's chest tightened painfully. He opened his mouth to tell her the truth, to confess that his help had never been born from kindness, but from a darker, colder place, but the words caught in his throat. Instead, he only nodded. His jaw clenched as shame gnawed at the edges of his soul. As Elena turned back to her book, Nathan sat frozen, his mind racing. This was not how it was supposed to go. He was supposed to hate her. He was supposed to see her only as a means to an end. But sitting there, in the hush of the penthouse, he could no longer deny the truth. He was starting to care for her, and it terrified him. Elena, by nature, was not someone who pried. She respected boundaries, even the silent, invisible ones Nathan kept around himself. But living with him, day after day, left her with more questions than answers. He could be kind sometimes, achingly so, but there was always something hidden beneath his surface, a shadow he refused to share. She reminded herself that it was not her place to dig deeper. After all, their marriage was an arrangement, not a love story. Still, one evening while Nathan was away at a late meeting, fate led her to a discovery she was never meant to make. She had only been searching for a pen in his office. A simple enough task. Everything in the room was immaculate, every surface gleaming, every object perfectly placed. But when she opened one of the drawers in his desk, her hand brushed against a thick, worn folder. Something about it made her hesitate. Before she could stop herself, she pulled it out. Her heart pounded as she flipped through the pages. Documents, emails, handwritten notes, all of them carefully detailing a plan to destroy her. There were records of her father's debts, medical reports, even a timeline of carefully orchestrated steps leading to their marriage. Every moment of her life had been dissected, analyzed, and used against her. At the center of it all stood Nathan Hale, the man she had dared, just barely, to trust. Tears blurred her vision as she slammed the folder shut and shoved it back into the drawer. Her chest tightened painfully. Her breaths came short and shallow. She had trusted him. She had allowed herself to believe, even for a fragile moment, that there could be something real between them. But it had all been a lie. When Nathan returned home later that night, the change in the air hit him instantly. Elena sat on the edge of the couch, her face pale, her hands clenched tightly in her lap, and he knew before she even spoke, she had found the truth. Elena's hands were clasped tightly in her lap. She did not look up when Nathan entered the room. "Elena," he said carefully, setting his briefcase down, the uncertainty in his voice stark against the usual steel. "Is everything all right?" Slowly, she lifted her gaze to meet his, and the pain in her eyes hit him harder than any blow ever could. "How long?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Were you going to keep lying to me?" Nathan froze, every word catching sharp in his throat. I don't know what you mean," he said. Though the words sounded hollow even to him, Elena stood, her movements sharp and trembling. "Do not insult me," she said, her voice rising. "I found the folder. Nathan, I know everything." For a long, aching moment, Nathan could not speak. The world he had built so carefully was crumbling at his feet, and for the first time in years, he had no idea how to stop it. "Elena," he managed, "I can explain." "Explain," she cut him off, her voice cracking with anger. "Explain that you married me to hurt my father, that you have been using me from the very beginning. Tell me, Nathan, what could you possibly say to make this right?" Nathan took a slow step forward, his hands lifted in surrender. "It was never supposed to be like this," he said quietly. "I did not expect..." "Did not expect what?" she snapped. "That I would find out, that I would see the truth behind your lies." His jaw tightened, shame and frustration battling within him. "I did not expect to care about you," he whispered. Elena's breath caught, but she quickly shook her head, tears blurring her vision. "You do not get to say that," she said, her voice breaking. "You do not get to pretend this is something it is not. You used me, Nathan, and I will never forgive you for that." Before he could respond, she turned and walked away, her footsteps echoing through the hollow penthouse. The slam of the guest bedroom door left Nathan standing alone in the silence. For the first time in as long as he could remember, Nathan Hale felt truly powerless. He had spent so long chasing vengeance, convincing himself that destroying Victor Langston would finally set him free. But now, standing amidst the ruins of what he had built, he understood the brutal truth. He had not destroyed his enemy. He had destroyed the only thing that might have ever saved him. The penthouse, once a symbol of his triumph, now felt cavernous and cold. Elena locked herself away in the guest room, refusing to see him, refusing to listen. Each day that passed was heavier than the last. Nathan tried, time and again, to approach her, to explain, but every knock on the door was met with the same response: "Leave me alone." And he did, because for the first time, he realized he had no plan for this, no strategy, no way to fix what he had broken. He had spent his life mastering control, but love, real love, did not yield to control. Meanwhile, Elena sat in the small guest room, a storm of emotions raging within her. Anger, betrayal, grief. She could not look at Nathan without seeing the lies he had so carefully woven around her. And yet, there was a part of her, fragile and trembling, that clung to the small, fleeting moments when he had seemed real, when his touch had been tender, his words unguarded. But how could she trust any of it now one evening? As the city lights flickered against the darkening sky, Elena sat by the window, her arms wrapped tightly around herself. There was a soft knock on the door. She did not answer, expecting him to walk away, as he always did. But this time, Nathan's voice came through, low and hesitant. "Elena," he said, "I know you do not want to see me, and I do not blame you, but I need you to know. I am sorry." Her chest tightened, but she stayed silent. "I never meant for it to go this far," he continued, his voice breaking slightly. "When I started all of this, I was angry. I thought revenge would fix everything. I thought it would make the pain go away." He paused, as if gathering strength. "But I was wrong. I was so wrong." Elena closed her eyes, her hands gripping the edge of the windowsill, her heart torn between the betrayal that still bled fresh and the longing that refused to die. Outside, the city pulsed with distant life. Inside, two broken hearts stood a few steps and a lifetime apart. "I know I do not deserve your forgiveness." Nathan's voice broke through the door, low and unsteady, "but you need to know. Somewhere along the way, everything changed. You changed me, and now, I cannot bear the thought of losing you." The rawness in his words caught Elena off guard. She wanted, desperately, to believe him, but the pain was still too fresh, too sharp. She stayed where she was, her heart battling fiercely with her mind. Outside the door, Nathan waited a few moments longer. When she gave no answer, he finally walked away, the sound of his retreat pressing heavier on Elena's chest than she cared to admit. Was it regret she felt, or the faintest flicker of something else, something like hope? The next morning, Elena woke to find the penthouse eerily silent. Nathan was gone. On the kitchen counter, in his neat, precise handwriting, he had left a simple note: "I will give you space, but I will always be here if you need me." True to his word, Nathan disappeared from her daily life. He moved into a hotel across the city, leaving Elena alone in the penthouse. But even from a distance, he found ways to reach her quiet gestures that spoke louder than words. He arranged for her father to receive the finest medical care available, ensuring every bill was paid without question. Groceries appeared at the penthouse door, carefully packed, always including her favorite things. When Elena's aging car broke down one rainy morning, she found a new one waiting quietly in the garage. The keys left on the counter, no note, no explanation. At first, Elena's anger burned hotter. She did not want his help. She did not want to feel indebted to him again. But as the days slipped into weeks, something shifted. She began to see the truth not in Nathan's promises, but in his actions. He was not trying to control her anymore. He was not trying to manipulate her or win her back through grand gestures. He was simply staying. The turning point came quietly one gray afternoon. Elena was visiting her father at the hospital when she overheard two nurses whispering at the nurses' station. "Did you hear about Mr. Langston's benefactor?" One said, "Someone has been covering all the costs anonymously. Must be someone who cares about him a great deal." Elena's heart twisted painfully. She knew, without needing confirmation, who it was. That evening, as she sat alone in the cavernous living room of the penthouse, she found herself thinking of Nathan, of the man who had betrayed her, yes, but also of the man who had stayed, even when she gave him every reason to leave. The man who, despite everything, had shown her a kind of love she had never dared to hope for. When Nathan returned to the penthouse that night, he found Elena waiting for him, seated on the edge of the sofa, her hands folded tightly in her lap. She looked up as he entered, nerves flickering in her dark eyes. She began, her voice barely above a whisper. Nathan froze, uncertain whether he should step closer or stay away. "Hi," he said simply, his voice rough with emotion. Elena took a breath, steadying herself. "I do not know if I can forgive you," she said honestly. "Not yet." Nathan's heart squeezed painfully, but he said nothing, letting her speak. "But," she continued, her voice softer now, "I can see that you are trying, and I think that matters." A flicker of hope sparked quietly in his chest. "I will keep trying," Nathan said, his voice thick with sincerity. "For as long as it takes." Elena nodded slowly, the tension between them easing slightly. It was not a reconciliation, not yet, but it was a beginning, and for the first time in a long time, Nathan dared to hope that perhaps, just perhaps, they could find their way back to each other. The days that followed were careful, fragile, like walking on a frozen river that might crack at any moment. Nathan kept his distance, letting Elena set the pace. For the first time in his life, he was not trying to control the outcome. He was simply waiting. Elena, meanwhile, found herself studying Nathan in a new light. He was different now, quieter, softer around the edges. The fierce, cold man she had first met seemed somehow gentler, tempered by regret and an earnestness he could no longer hide. But the wounds he had caused were still there, and trust, once broken, was not easily mended. The true test came sooner than either of them expected, one afternoon. As the sky outside turned dark with gathering rain, Elena's phone rang a call from the hospital. Her father's condition had taken a sudden, devastating turn. The news hit Elena like a blow she was not prepared for. The doctors' voices were grim. Her father's condition had worsened. They were not sure if he would make it through the night. Panic gripped her chest as she rushed to the hospital, heart hammering so loudly she could hardly hear herself think. She did not know what to do, who to turn to. Without thinking, she reached for her phone and called Nathan. He arrived within minutes, his face pale, his eyes dark with concern. "What happened?" he asked, his voice steady but laced with fear he could not hide. "They do not think he will survive the night," Elena whispered, tears streaming down her cheeks. I do not know what to do." Nathan did not hesitate. He reached for her hand, gripping it tightly, grounding her in a world that suddenly felt like it was spinning out of control. "You do not have to do this alone," he said softly. "I am here. Whatever you need, I am here." For the next endless hours, Nathan never left her side. He spoke to the doctors. He arranged for specialists to be called in. He made sure Elena had coffee, a blanket, a chair to rest in, every small kindness that she was too shattered to ask for. Through every moment of fear and uncertainty, Nathan was there, a steady presence in the chaos. When the worst of the crisis had finally passed and her father stabilized, Elena sat down heavily in the waiting room, exhaustion weighing down every limb. Nathan appeared at her side with a cup of coffee, his movements careful, as if afraid to break the fragile peace. "Thank you," Elena whispered, her voice hoarse from tears. Nathan sat beside her, his hands clasped tightly together, his expression unreadable. "You do not have to thank me," he said quietly. I wanted to be here." Elena turned to him, truly looking at him. For the first time, she saw not the man who had once plotted against her, but the man who had put everything aside, his pride. his anger, his need for control just to stand beside her when she needed someone most. And something inside her shifted, weeks later, in the soft, golden light of a quiet evening. Elena stood in the kitchen watching as Nathan carefully set the table for dinner. It was a simple meal, no grand feast, no elaborate performance, just 2 plates, 2 glasses, and a small vase of wildflowers she had picked up earlier that day. It was nothing like the life of spectacle he had once offered her, and yet, it was more meaningful than anything else he had ever given. As they sat down to eat, Nathan cleared his throat, his expression serious, almost nervous. "Elena," he began, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "I know I have said this before, but I need to say it again. I am sorry for everything, for the lies, for the hurt, for making you question yourself and your heart." He swallowed hard before continuing. "I do not expect you to forgive me, but I need you to know. I am not the man I was when all this began. You changed me. And I will spend the rest of my life trying to be the man you deserve." Tears welled up in Elena's eyes, but this time, they were not born from sadness. They were tears of something gentler, something brimming with hope. She reached across the table and took his hand in hers, her fingers warm and sure. "I do not know if I will ever forget what happened," she said honestly, "but I see you trying, and I think I am ready to try too." Nathan's breath caught in his throat. "You mean that?" he asked, voice shaking. Elena smiled through her tears, a real, unguarded smile. "I do." The road ahead would not be easy. There were wounds still tender, trust still fragile, a past to reckon with, but for the first time, they faced the future not as enemies, not as strangers trapped by old ghosts. They faced it as 2 people willing to fight together for something real. That night, as they sat side by side in the quiet living room, the city lights twinkling beyond the glass, Elena leaned her head against Nathan's shoulder, and for the first time in so long, she felt at peace. Nathan wrapped his arm around her, holding her close. He did not know what challenges tomorrow might bring, but he knew one thing, simple and certain. He would do whatever it took to protect the woman he once set out to destroy, because now, she was not part of a plan. She was his home. She was everything. If this story touched your heart, we invite you to like, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to our channel for more journeys filled with hope, healing, and second chances. Your support means more to us than words can say, and do not forget to turn on the notification bell, so you never miss a new story that might brighten your day or warm your heart. We will see you again soon, with another tale where love, courage, and redemption find their way home. In a world built on broken promises and hidden pain, sometimes it is the most unexpected love that finds a way to heal what is broken. Nathan and Elena's journey was not perfect. It was messy, painful, and full of doubts. But through every moment of darkness, they chose hope, they chose forgiveness, and slowly, they built something stronger than either of them had ever dared to imagine. Their story reminds us that even when trust is shattered and hearts are bruised, with courage and kindness, love can still find its way home. If this story touched your heart, we would love for you to like, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us bring more heartfelt and inspiring tales to life. And do not forget to turn on the notification bell, so you never miss a story that could change the way you see love and second chances. Thank you for being here. Until next time, keep believing in the magic of healing and the power of a new beginning.